there. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's visit to Moscow and the purchase of the Russian S-400 air defense system are being watched carefully by the United States. With setbacks in Turkish local elections and the Middle East facing geopolitical shifts, what's the big picture of Erdogan's meeting with Putin? How is Turkey pursuing its own interests in a game of balance between the United States and Russia? And what could it mean for the Middle East as alignments evolve and change? To discuss these issues more, I'm very happy to be joined in the studio by Cui Hongjian, Director of the Department for European Studies at the China Institute of International Studies, and Rick Dunham, a visiting scholar at Tsinghua University. We shall also speak via satellite to Pavel Falkenhorst, Russian defense analyst in Moscow, and Serkan Aral, political analyst and writer in Istanbul. That's our topic. This is a dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Hongjian, I believe you must have been following the agenda of President Erdogan. What do you think would be the major issues to be discussed between the two heads of state?
We can maybe help the leaders to calculate how many these priorities and the very big issues between those two countries during this visit by President Erdogan. Firstly, how could both sides to recognize what's the role or what's the position of Russia in Middle East, especially after the United States, especially Mr. Trump, said that, okay, we should go back from Middle East to the United States. And secondly, yes, I think it would be a very, very big event for President Erdogan after the maybe a kind of a failure of the local election. So he needed to get some proof, I mean, especially from foreign affairs, to prove that still Mr. Erdogan is a very, very qualified leader for Turkey. But of course, I think then there will be some other issues related to the current and maybe future situation in Middle East. As we know, once the Trump administration took the power, there are very, very big change of the policy from the United States towards the Middle East. So how could Russia and Turkey to get some more consensus in maybe a large, I mean, in the Middle East policy or situation at large? I think it would be a very, very major issue.
Rick, what do you think would be the major issues at the back of each other's minds? Look at their exchange of stares, their glances. Maybe they were calculating and trying to figure out how they should handle the relationship, which was somehow disrupted when the fighter jets was down and when the Russian ambassador was assassinated in Ankara. What do you think of the subtle bilateral relationship between Moscow and Ankara?
Well, I think there are two sets of agendas at play. President Putin is interested in Russia's role in the Middle East and have Turkey lean more toward them. He's interested in Russia's role in the Black Sea and Ukraine, Crimea, and he's interested in arms sales. In terms of President Erdogan, he's in the middle, between the United States and Russia. He wants to show his power, that he is an influential person, and he also has interests in Syria, particularly with the Kurds, and he wants to at least have discussions with President Putin about the future of the Kurdish area and what Turkey's role may be. Then thirdly, you have the issue of Iran and Saudi Arabia, where both Russia and Turkey have interests that are not the same. So I think they want to talk about that, the Middle East more broadly than Syria.
Thank you very much. Let's quickly take a look at a video clip that I had in an interview, exclusive one, with President Erdogan a few years ago when he was visiting China. Let's take a quick look at what he says in the interview about.
Sadece o değil tabii. Bizim Rusya'yla da aynı zamanda stratejik işbirliği anlaşmamız var. Kaldı ki biz bugün doğalgaz ihtiyacımızın büyük bir kısmını Rusya'dan temin ediyoruz. Bu yönde de bir stratejik işbirliğimiz var. Ve biz bu yatırımlar içerisinde yer almadık ve Rusya ile olan ilişkilerimizi aynı kararlılıkta devam ettirdik.
The two countries enjoy a strategic cooperation agreement, which is a significant foundation for our bilateral relations, and we export a vast majority of the natural gas that is being consumed in Turkey from Russia. So that lays a strong foundation for our relations. We have never become a part of the sanctions imposed on Russia, and that's why we have continuously invested in developing further relations with Russia.
Biliyorsunuz siyaset ülkelerle işbirliği sürecinizi kesinlikle A'dan Z'ye atma işbirliğini kesme sanatı değildir.
Of course, when it comes to politics, we have to understand one fact, that cooperation doesn't necessarily mean that you can change the relations and get rid of the relations overnight from A to Z.
Görüş ayrılıklarınız olabilir ama belli konularda yine işbirliğini devam ettiririz.
You might have dissenting opinions, but the politics actually leads you to come to an understanding in various terms.
Welcome back. Let me go back to Pavel Faganhor, our Russian guest speaker who's standing by in Moscow, and he's really well versed about the history between the two countries. Now, to my poor knowledge about the bilateral relationship, if you review history between Istanbul, Ankara, and Moscow, Pavel, what do you make of the current driving force behind the thaw in the relationship, and what does that mean for Washington?
Well, there are a bit different agendas in Moscow and in Ankara about what the relations should be about. Russia is very, very traditional. Russia has seen the Straits, the Bosphorus, and the Dardanelles as a strategically prize, very important for Russia and the security of Russia, and maybe even more so than ever before, though this was part of Russian policy for centuries. Because right now Sochi is the summer residence of Vladimir Putin, where he spends a lot of time and actually runs the country quite often from from Sochi. So that means the security of Sochi, the presence or non-presence of NATO warships in the Black Sea is very important, and that is regulated by the power that controls the Bosphorus, by Turkey. So for the Russian supreme prize would be to weaken Turkish-American relations as much as possible, pull Turkey as far away from NATO as possible, and no expense is going to be is too much to get that. Of course, there are other agendas. There's Syria, there's the province, there's the gas pipeline bypassing Ukraine through Turkey to the southern Europe. For Turkey, it's a way to show the United States that Turkey has other friends, and that the United States should take Turkish interest into account, or Turkey is going to turn to Russia. And so that's more or less what the Erdogan is playing. Of course, Russia is very important economically, militarily, and strategically in its own right.
Thank you very much. Let me go to our Turkish friend. Pavel, the Russian guest speaker, says clearly Moscow has its own ambitious agenda of pulling Turks away from NATO and Washington as far away as it could. Now, what do you think of President Erdogan's calculations at the moment? Will he be very supportive of the Putin agenda, or he will just follow his own agenda very strictly?
I think the American politicians are supporting this idea and let Turkey away from NATO. But especially Erdogan seems that these ideas and some parts of the United States Congress are under effect of Israel policies. But Turkey especially there are some points disagree with Russia also, like the Black Sea issue and the Crimean Peninsula from Ukraine issues. But we can say that Turkey has been working with Russia, but doesn't mean that Turkey is undermining the alliance We agree with Russia on several points, especially on Syria and the arm deals, but there is no shift in Turkish foreign policy. The Erdogan is showing to US that he has local collaborations in the region, especially named this a strategical partnership. Turkey, as a NATO member, has a strategic allies with United States, but United States is facing with a brand new problem that a NATO member, Turkey, is getting Russian arms, and they have saying that a threatened to NATO and US arms if Turkey get these missiles from Russia. So the conflict is on the not Russian and Turkish side. I think American politicians should understand that this is the 21st century and a NATO member can deal or agree with a non-NATO member like Russia or China or Iran.
Despite the independence of the Turkish foreign policy, what about your attitudes towards the Kurds in the Middle East, particularly those who have been left stranded in Syria? Now, what would be the end game of the military drawdown by the Pentagon? Will President Erdogan be allowed by Moscow to attack Kurds whose ambition for establishing its own country, despite the autonomy of those Kurds in northern Iraq? What would be the picture like? Our friend in Ankara, please.
This is the so sensitive issue on the table with Putin and Erdogan's agenda. United States they are planning to establish a terrorist region in the borders of Turkey from Syria, from Iran and from Iraq, so till to the Mediterranean Sea. And Turkey and Russia and also the regional countries, Iran and Syria, don't let this. So Turkish army is ready to attack the terrorist components in Syria. So Turkey announced this before, and the American politicians like Pence, they are rejecting these attacks to Syria, but Turkey urged that this is a critical and for Turkish next years it's an important surviving point. And let me say another important point. Turkey is doing operations with Russia in the Idlib area, and also going to do operations with the east part of Syria with the US army. So it's an interesting point that Turkey, if decided to make an operation, will not ask to United States about this, but will coordinate with Russia, Iran, and the other regional countries. So this is an important agenda for Turkey to not to wait US policies to establish in the region. Turkey will establish its own policies with the border countries and Russia.
Now, Tel Aviv, or the Israeli state, is known for being the strongest ally of the U.S. government in the Middle East as a democracy. Now, given the fact that the 2019 is a year of election for both President Erdogan and Prime Minister Netanyahu, given the pressure of setbacks in the local elections in Turkey, what do you think of the presence of the Israeli military, the national defense, which vows to fight ISIL in Syria, and that has caused some troubles? Will the Israeli strikes be a major issue for not just the Russians, but for Turks as well?
The policies of Israel Prime Minister is rejected from Turkish side, especially on Al-Quds and other components. And Turkey says irresponsible Netanyahu can't change the West Bank status. This is all about elections. But in these years, the Erdogan has thinking that the Israel policies are shaping Trump's policies in the region. So don't reject these cooperations at the northern Iraq, Iran, and Syria. Turkey has relations with Iran that is banned from Syria and even United States. And Turkey has some conflicts still with Israel, and Israel is supported by the United States. So this is an ongoing problem with United States and NATO dealing with Turkey. Even United States is given the F-35 airstrike fighters to Israel, but rejecting to give to our paid F-35
that's indeed a big pity for Ankara
Turkey.
not to have a
So
F-35 at this moment
points,
because of your decision to have a S-400 air defense system from Russia. I'd like to go back to Pavel. Pavel, we've been discussing, the issue of the Kurds and President Erdogan's political agenda at home, and part of that is, of course, to present a tough face to Kurds in Syria, where Kurds wants to have their own homeland. So what do you think of attitudes of President Putin? Will he give a green light to President Erdogan's military maneuvers in Syria?
Well, that's not that straightforward an issue. It's not easy. Russian and Turkish interests have somewhat clashed in Idlib province. The Russians would want the Idlib, the last stronghold of the anti-Assad opposition, to be taken over, the anti-Assad forces expelled or surrender, and the Assad government take over the country, including Idlib province, which the Turks are reluctant to allow. And Russia, Moscow, Putin have, actually against some advice from the Russian military, Putin agreed with Erdogan that Idlib could wait, because for Putin apparently Turkey and Erdogan are more important than what's happening in Syria per se. And of course Russia was an ally of the Kurds on and off for almost 70 years, supporting the Kurds against local governments in the Middle East who were seen as pro-Western. Now, and still, even right now, Russia has in Moscow, there's a semi-official embassy or representation of Rojava, the Syrian Kurdish entity. But I would believe that in the end, Russia could even sacrifice its connections with the Kurds if it got Turkey in exchange. Turkey is much more important. So, but this is going to be a very delicate bargaining thing between Erdogan and Putin. What assurances he gives that he will be more anti-American if Russia gives up this or that point. So there's going to be a lot of real bargaining between the
Thank
two
you so much,
on
Pavel.
many issues.
Isn't it scary for us observers that anybody, any country, any forces could be a pawn in the strategic game of Moscow? So Kurds might be sacrificed if necessary, because Turkey is more important, according to Pavel. So what do you think of the importance of Turkey as a member of NATO, and what does that mean for the United States in the Middle East, and perhaps on the issue of refugees, exchange of intelligence reporting, fighting terrorism? NATO's operations in the Middle East have been somehow undermined because of the reluctance of President Erdogan to be involved in the fight against ISIL. Now, in your review, what do you think of the importance of Turkey as a member of NATO?
Historically, Turkey has been a key member of NATO. If you go back to the early days, after it was admitted in 1952, American spy planes flew out of Turkey. The famous U-2 of Francis Gary Powers that was shot down left from Turkey. And Turkey was a key ally. It's the second largest military at NATO after the United States. And so it's vital. And strategically, as Pavel was saying, it has the keys to the Black Sea, which is considered by the Russian military key to the military. So right now, I think a lot of Turkish leaders believe that the United States and NATO have taken them for granted, that they are transactional about Turkish interests, that they support Turkish interests when it's in the interest of NATO or when it's in the interest of Washington. And I think President Erdogan does believe he should be more independent and represent Turkish interests as opposed to the alliance first. I think, as Pavel said, it's a key priority of President Putin to separate Turkey from NATO and to turn Turkey as much against the United States as possible. I think he will double down in this time in Moscow on the military sales, which he knows will aggravate Washington, and possibly offer more to bring Turkey closer. I do think Turkey is a key member of NATO, and I think that this is a moment where Turkey sees its leverage, and it's going to try to bargain for maximum effect.
Hong Jie, as a Chinese observer who follows the European studies and relationship of Turkey with the Russians, what do you think of the chronic mistrust between Washington and Ankara ever since perhaps the coup attempt, which was aborted due to the Russian help, the intelligence report, before it actually took place? Now, President Erdogan has good reasons to be grateful to Russians' generous help, very critical help. So, President Erdogan accused Washington of supporting an opposition leader in exile, a religious cult leader. So, do you see any silver lining for the two sides, Washington and Ankara, to remarkably improve their trust?
If we look at this, I think a very interesting, we call the middle power game, especially played by President Erdogan between Russia and the United States. I think because we need to understand that since Mr. Erdogan took the position as the president in Turkey, he had a very clear principle and also target for the policy of Turkey is to keep an independent policy, and to try to maybe develop from a regional power to a maybe global power like that. So he has a so big ambition. So you can find that he's very, very willing to be a part of a big power game. So that's I think that yes, I agree with our American guest's view that yes, Turkey is a very important and also critical part of NATO. And yes, now Mr. Erdogan tried to take use of this role as the role of the Turkey in NATO. So he understands that okay, what's the limitation of Turkey to play with the card of United States and Russia. But of course now the question for Turkish foreign policy is, after the coup attempted several years ago, maybe the priority changed to some degree. Because comparing with Russia, maybe Russia, as we understand, sometimes Russia and Turkey, they do have their own conflicts in Syria or some other. But comparing with this maybe a threat from Russia, maybe a kind of intervention from the United States towards its domestic affairs will be a bigger threat. So actually that's a very, very big reason why Mr. Erdogan now he shows maybe a closer attitude or a stance towards Moscow, not Washington. But of course, now I think once there are some other things change, for example, from Washington towards Ankara, as we know now, not only this political intervention possibly from Washington towards Ankara, and also the sanction from Trump's administration against Ankara, also a very, very big problem for this bilateral relations. So I think that once there are some issues could be resolved, for example, once Washington agree with some requirement from Ankara for some political issue, for example, to get back some people from Washington to from United States to Turkey, and also there are some release of sanction from Washington to Ankara. I think there will be some change, but even something changed. But once Mr. Erdogan will insist his policy of independent foreign policy, certainly he will continue to play the game of middle power to try to keep a balance between the two major powers.
Politicians used to be very skillful in using whatever ammunition in favor of his policy, domestic and foreign alike. Let's look at the impact of outspoken Saudi journalist Khashoggi's murder, right. The use of the jigsaw. Does this event help President Erdogan show up his popularity in reshaping his image, redefining the role that Turkey plays in the Middle East?
Yes, that murder actually represents the complexity of the issue, but also the power that President Erdogan has. He very skillfully used leaks, whether he was responsible or he was the beneficiary, to embarrass Saudi Arabia and to embarrass the Trump administration. But he had justice on his side. I mean, there was a murder that took place that was being covered up. He was the person who was defending the quote right side, and so it was interesting because it also helped Iran in the battle with Saudi Arabia. So I think he is very good at picking issues of the moment and taking advantage of them politically, and he has a lot of power in Turkey, but he doesn't have overwhelming support, and so I think he finds it important to do things that back up his popularity, that help him even momentarily maintain support, because he needs that support to project to the world his power as this broker between East and West.
Let me go back to our Turkish panelist, Mr. Serkan Aurel, for his comments on the personal influence and popularity of President Erdogan after the devastating setbacks in local elections, the mayoral elections, and what do you think of, say, the alleged backlash of Islamic fundamentalism in your country, which is regarded as the hotbed and the power base for the popularity of President Erdogan?
It seems that last 16 years, the Erdogan's AK Party team are getting tired, and especially with the leadership of the presidency elections is over 50%, 51. Now he got 52, around 52. So it's a stable issue for him, but it seems that he lost to Ankara and Istanbul local majority. But let me clear that Ankara and Washington would be able to smooth out the dispute. Turkey is not choosing between Russia and other allies. So whatever happens to Erdogan's next 4 years, we Turkey don't see the.
Thank you so much.
We don't see our relations with
we don't
Russia
have enough time for your
as
analysis.
an alternative to our.
Excuse me, sorry, we apologize. We are running out of time. Thank you for your analysis about the relationship between Washington and Ankara as members of NATO. As President Erdogan engineers a swift from parliamentary politics to the dominance of the presidency in Ankara, we're going to see how games play out in terms of both regional power in the Middle East as well as the issue of balance between Moscow and Washington. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.